Զանգում են ինձ մի հատ նայել, հետո կզանգել, հա, դավայ, Հարց ունեմ Անի ջան, ես նոր եմ մուտքագրում իմ բոլոր ամբողջ համակարգը, այսինքն վերջերս եմ արձեբացել։ Եվ հիմա ինձ ամեն ինչ արել եմ, ինձ մնում է միայն այս էլեկտրոնային հաշվարկային փաստաթղթերի կառավարման համակարգ մտնելը ու այս գաղտնաբառն ու օգտվողի անունն է ինձ պետք։ Օգտվողի անունը, օգտվող և գաղտնաբառ։ Ես դա որտեղից պետք է ստանամ ու ինչպես։ Այսինքն չեմ կարող էլեկտրոնային ճանապարհով դա ստանալ։ Այո, կատարել եմ։ Ինձ հիմա արդեն պետք է invoice գրել, դրա համար այդ համակարգը գաղտնաբառ։ Այսինքն ես գնամ հարկային ամեն դեպքում, գնամ։ Շատ լավ, սոցքարտի համարը 6307 600 632 Այո, բարի, շնորհակալություն։ Dear guests and participants, please take your seats. In 2 minutes we are going to start our next session together with our guests. Please. Dear guests, please take your seats. Mr. Demirkhanyan asked me to start this session before he arrives. As you know, the Deputy Minister is a very busy person, so before starting the exchange of information with our debaters, with our speakers, Mr. Zargaryan has a presentation. Well, actually, it would be good if some sort of, if we start, if we have at least some kind of beginning source information, and then we shall continue the debate and discussion. Good morning. I am Anna Chulian from Brusev University Library Director and head of the Consortium of Armenian Electronic Libraries. I have named my speech like the challenge of 21st century to libraries. Naturally, there is not one, but many challenges, but we have nevertheless one very serious challenge: to be or not to be in the traditional way that we used to be before. I have come back only yesterday from the Crete University Library training, where there were librarians from 8 countries. I want to start this is the shop for recovering books. Look at how the librarians are watching the process of preservation of books or recovery, and how all of this is going on. And as long as I had the chance to meet with so many librarians, I asked all of them to say in one word or one sentence, to write actually, how do they imagine what is going to be the future of libraries next year. See, they wrote it on small papers, and I'm going to make a small analysis. And we have Jerry Cullen, who is from Dresden University, and he told me or she told me, I will think and I will send you the answer. And she sent me one word, end game. But in Google Translator, I found a very interesting translation already. See, in Armenian language, R10 is already. So, is it the time, end game? Is it time? Is the game ending or not? These are simply opinions, electronic, digital, but they say I prefer classical book, robots will serve people, bigger reading halls, and there are many opinions. And seems that all of them are coming towards digital libraries, but this last one is interesting. Only those will go to libraries who are living with memories and are having some feeling of nostalgia for libraries. I think this is the, however, starting point, that the electronic libraries will squeeze out the traditional ones. Today they say that people don't go to libraries and they don't read books. This is the coverage of, this is the Bruce University Library. We have given out only 8,621 books, physical books, to our readers. Next slide. We have been, we are, and will be. In the beginning they were depositories of manuscripts. Most probably the manuscripts were served kind of differently. I had visited Sanahin University, the ancient university, Armenian, recently, and I thought how they were serving these books to readers. Now we have to think about how we are going to serve the digital material. What do we need today? This is an opinion: free access, diversity, pleasant environment, possibility for consultation, and along with this comes the idea of the 21st century. Let's break the stereotypes. You know, already for 7 years I'm leading a library and I'm working with librarians, and I can say one thing for sure. Knowledge is perceptible, but there are stereotypes which have not been broken yet in the libraries, and that is the biggest challenge for the librarians, that we are not breaking these stereotypes of librarians on how to serve in the library. Of course, the most important thing, most important thing is the information digital literacy. In the morning I was listening to you and I understood that we have yet one more very serious problem, which is the literacy about cyber security. We have started some training courses for librarians, which we call IT literacy, which includes digital literacy, media literacy, and we are going to think about Samuel Martirosyan has a wonderful book on cyber security. Most probably on the basis of his booklet we'll start something else. I haven't found anything new here. If you Google in the internet, when you look for 21st century library, it brings a lot of links. I brought some of them there. But look here, technological development, innovative education, all of this, all the same, are based on librarian community. The librarians are the interface, the mediators for transferring all of these between technology, education and society. Look how great our needs of information and proficiencies, and day after day they are growing along with the development of technologies. What are our problems as of today? Yes, indeed, e-publishing and digital libraries. Well, of course, The National Library, the Fundamental Academy, has already digitized a lot of materials and they are available, but we have very serious problems of e-publishing. I wouldn't even say that in Armenia no institution, no university has the so-called institutional repository, that is to say the base of the scientific products. We have only the registers of theses, dissertations, but we have still a lot to do here. One of the most important starting baselines is of course the intellectual property right that would not allow us to use freely the books, digitize them. We have constantly to take care of these controlling mechanisms, and this commission already has from the Ministry of Economy has submitted to the National Assembly some modifications and changes in the law on intellectual property. But there is something interesting here. Why have I left this point? That according to the new law it will be allowed to reproduce in limited numbers regardless of format, and the libraries will be allowed to use this information for the educational purposes. Of course, a lot of people like publishers and others might not agree with this, because when they have published a textbook, and if we digitize it and use it in our database electronically, of course from the point of view of the publisher that is infringement of her rights, but the university must provide this textbook to the students, and so we constantly have collision of interests in this respect. See, yesterday on September 29, a new material have found, a New Zealand site where the students have created an app where when you show your face and the app chooses what book you need to read according to the expression or mood on your face. And the question is, after all of them are human made, and so who is to choose who is? Well, we said a lot today that we don't need to create newly a bicycle. The world has already solved all of these issues. This is 2017 book on raising the on matching library assessments to institutions' needs, and well, a lot has been done in this respect. We have to adopt and adapt. Where are we and where do we go? This is the point where we have stopped and we need to think. I want to speak also about the dangers. Internet is a wonderful tool. Globalization is something beautiful, that sitting here we know what's going on in the other side of the world. But I am myself professor and I'm teaching literature, and I see what's going on with the students. We have already outreached with technology to the schools, and we're doing something bad in my opinion, because we see that there are the main problems of students are dyslexia, dysgraphia and depression, lack of focusing when the students are forced to read a part from a text, because text is not visible. They can't concentrate on the text more than for 20 minutes. They ask them to read a small part of the text, and if we are going towards the digital library, we are going to face a very serious danger for the health of the future generation. I had here a piece from Alice from Wonderland, when Alice would ask the Cheshire cat, where should I go, which road should I choose, and the cat says, choose whichever you want. Alice says, I don't care. And the cat says, if you don't care, then doesn't matter which road you would go. Well, frankly, Alice is translated into Armenian language, but the electronic version was not available for me to put it here. But there is an exit. I think a hybrid library gives us a solution, be it a digital library or library of digits. I think we have to combine paper and digits and provide our readers both versions and be ready to provide all possible forms if anybody would like to read. This much, if you have any questions. Hello, I apologize for being late, but the main message that I was to receive, most probably I have received already. Frankly, when Mr. Sahian asked me to chair this session, I thought he was joking. Nevertheless, I will try to do my best to share with you my opinion, and maybe my opinion with your opinion could be useful for a common approach. I simply want to say two words in the framework of the previous speaker's speech. You think that there should be one direction. No, you don't. It means that we are ready to have that source of information and we are ready to go towards it. For having it, that will provide that source of information that will provide rapid, circulating, accessible. Okay, 3 or 4 months ago I had a meeting in Germany and I found that they have the same problems as we do here, and the idea of libraries is kind of very urgent there. They think that library is a link for precise, correct information. All the other information sources, they can't be as correct as or as precise as trustworthy as the libraries are, because they are formed in a volatile manner. Well, that is actually an approach around which I would like to listen to your opinions. Is internet, that is a quick, accessible means, is data existing in the internet able to replace our data, our internet data, able to replace the idea of library? Can they replace libraries, the information and data that we have in the internet? Well, as long as I took the responsibility to give the answer, I would say that always for students when I lecture, I say why they should not Google but find for information in the library, because when the library places some information or content, library bears responsibility for the content that is placed there in the library. That is to say, unchecked information is not entitled, and we have no right to place any unchecked information in our sites. That's the main idea. I kind of narrow the focus towards the university library because a survey that was made 2 years ago, reading in Armenian population, this survey has shown that the main reading population are students that are studying in the universities. And before acquiring all these skills, or in order to acquire these skills so as to see which is wrong, what is right, only after that we can leave them to navigate. But before that, we should limit the kind of advice for access, because in a sense we're teaching something. Maybe a library is only a resource or database. It can never be simply a bookshelf or resource database, because the books will not reach the students without the work of the librarian. Indeed, we have this principle of one window, but nevertheless the library should not be seen as a depository of books. Besides, libraries are becoming places of social activities, like places of meeting, places where people feel themselves good, and that's not wrong to perceive libraries as depositories, and that's not a new idea, that libraries are not depositories at all. As far as I know, we have other speakers, don't we? Yes. Please, if you can. I am the director of the National Library, and the topic is indeed very, very hot, very urgent. National libraries will always be there because they are, in a sense, depository libraries, and so there should be a structure or institution that would collect and keep the heritage. And the printed libraries exist already for more than 500 years, and I think that in these 500 years have shown that they are libraries are resilient. So never at the same time that digitally libraries have huge problems. There are problems of technical character, compatibility problem, and they have only a history of 20-25 years. The national libraries indeed still have a function for the next 100 or more years. The academic libraries, like university libraries, I have some doubts in that respect, because today the scientific research magazines are not published on printer. Now, like if we take Springer and a lot of others, they don't publish anything on paper. Even Britannica is now online. They have also the Britannica encyclopedia is not published on paper. The distance learning is getting velocity and expanding, and if we would not have a digital audience here, a digital library here, then how are we going to provide literature to students living in remote parts of the country? So distance learning and digital magazines are squeezing out the paper. In Armenia we do have this example. All our 13 academic magazines published by the Academy of Science have their electronic versions. They still publish on paper, but the life will show, because they are costly, and they will force out the paper copies, and only the electronic ones will stay. This was the global vision. Digitization is an absolute must. We can't say that let's live without digitization, somebody will do it for us, because all languages do it with their own alphabets, and we are responsible for Armenian alphabet literature. Now we are digitizing the Armenian media, which is around 2,700,000 pages already. We are free for access, for downloading, reading, and they are pictures, because it is impossible to digitize it through setting. We have more than 8,000 books. Here there is of course the intellectual property right, but we still have work to do. In these two directions we are working very actively, and we have an audience, and it's very nice that people from all over the world are entering our digital libraries and reading books. Our first steps we were doing in the main research libraries of Academy of Science and National Academy. Our regional libraries have joined us, some community libraries have joined us, and the third step is the creation of the all-Armenian library, and outside we have the Mkhitaryan, the Antilles, the Jerusalem, and we have some agreement with them to provide them with some digitization tools and software, so as they would digitize whatever they have, because in Armenia's National Library not all of their materials are available because of different economic and political reasons, because we have huge diaspora, and some of the books that are missing in our library are available there. So my absolute conviction is that we have to go towards digital library, and the number of our supporters is growing and the quality of the work is also improving, but that the traditional library is going to stay, I'm absolutely sure in this, because in any case these digital technologies and computer technologies are still to grow and develop. They are not stabilized yet. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, and we know already that the paper is going to serve still long. Thank you very much. A quite interesting dialogue has been generated. From one side, you said that digitization is something that is to happen, that it is unavoidable. I remember maybe more, that was a kind of science fiction material or fantasy material. It was telling that the Library of Alexandria had different formats bearing information. From ancient times, they had on manuscripts, book format, some paper format. So the question is whether the CD or laser carriers or contemporary carriers will find their place in these libraries. But my opinion, I think that the question is on a different level, that library will stay as such until the moment when the last user will take the book in his or her hands. If I'm wrong, I think that starting from that moment when the last reader would apply for a book, the library as a library will stop its existence if the last reader will leave it, and unfortunately it will become a big political, educational, scientific and etc. data depository, an archive even, let us say. And if from one side you say that that way is unavoidable, should we kind of accelerate it or not? What would you say about it? Marat Yavrurat, electronic publishing, founder of Yavrurat, founder of the Yavrurat Electronic Publishing. There are a couple of ideas were stated here which are interconnected. The library end user or library only depository, where well, of course it's difficult not to agree with the Germans, better be whether it is precise information or knowledge. So there's always a question. One of the questions is as what will be the form of the library 10 years after? And the question is going to be raised in that sense in which we perceive the library today, the place where the knowledge is kept and where the knowledge is available. I assume that in 10 years, whether you will call them precise information or knowledge or I don't know, whatever, the place where there will be library. Well, if you speak of depository. A depository is to be maintained. A depository is to be kept. It's to be preserved. And it means that there are to be librarians who would do all this work. Today, I mean, this work that way. Library is going to remain a place for accumulation of knowledge, which won't be limited by corporations like the Google will decide that there is going to be digitization of Armenian text or not, whether our academy will decide. And the library will be able to solve the problem of access to public. And also there is the issue of this because, for example, Alice in Wonderland, why do we not have in electronic version? Because the intellectual rights belongs to Zangak Publishing House, and the Zangak Publishing House is the traditional publishing house, and they detest the electronic forms of publishing, so they prefer to continue the traditional way of publishing on paper, and that is why we don't have it in English in Armenian translation in digitized form. And even the electronic publishing business of Europe, America shows that the publishing share of electronic books in the general publishing market is 30%, which means that it is expanding. It is growing because people who prefer electronic, maybe some people or both, they prefer to have both, and they buy. So what's going to be the future of our libraries 10 years later? I'd like the libraries to be very strong study centers, where, as Mr. Zargayan says, all standards will be developed, or certain versions of standards, and we will have not simply workers, librarians who hardly can use computers, and at the same time they are dictating these standards, suggesting book formats or for preserving and disseminating, meaning tools that will be developed in libraries, as in research centers or centers of studies. And more importantly, the libraries should be able to generate income, to be self-sustainable through selling their access, to selling the knowledge, through selling the whatever. But they should be bankable to be able to survive, and to be there. This much. Thank you. Most probably I'd agree with everything besides the bankability, which means that the toilet is to be paid, the books are to be paid, or you read for 15 minutes and then it will be paid. For hundreds of years, the libraries have not pursued any income. Their pursuit is after the quality of the societies. So a library can never be bankable. And they constantly force us to bring extra budgetary money. How are we going to do it? We have this law on free access to information. A person is entitled, has the right to have free access to information. If we make the tickets to library paid, then we're infringing the right of the human being to have access to information. How can a library be bankable? They should be always budgetary institutions. I do not agree with the bankability of a library. We have students who can't pay, by the way, and that means it is free of charge. The readers' tickets, the readers' cards are free of charge. Otherwise, a lot of young people won't come to the library, because library is warm, it is dry, it is lit, it is air conditioned, and this is the place where there is no noise or sound, and students prefer to come there to do their homeworks and read in general. It's a topic to argue because our current physical libraries are only for students, but we have 3 million Armenian diaspora who have no access. So why not then make it payable, so as people would be able to use our resources from outside? And that is very, very good practice all over the world, and you can't so Armenians are not English-speaking nation. We are very small. We have tried this approach, and the income is going to be tiny. So that's why we are providing everything free of charge, or from with grants, and we are providing all of this to Armenians free of charge. If we make it payable, then believe me, very few people will use. We have a lot of people studying our literature, reading our resources, and if they want something, we quickly digitize for them. In case of Armenian publication, Armenian language publication, I think the damage will be more than the generated income. With English language literature and Russian language literature, that I agree with you, but with Armenian I won't agree. If we are creating electronic publishing, it is to be maintained, yes, the technology needs some maintenance, at least somebody is to be there to manage this. So at least a symbolic money that would allow maintenance. Well, the state budget is giving us a lot of enough allowances, and there are grants for libraries all over the world. They give very good grants to libraries, and we have several 100,000 euro equipment for digitization, and we have received them through grants. That's not the question, that we won't be able to maintain a library from the paid money from the readers, because we need huge resources, and we won't be able to do it on the account of the readers who pay. Grigor Saryan, I don't know to whom should I apply, maybe to everybody. How do you see this concept of book depository, whether it is going to be kept, say, or to be still viable 10 years later? May I answer? We see in minimum sizes, because the textbooks are becoming obsolete and aging, as physically, as philosophically or ideologically, and we are going to digitize them all. And now the universities can't afford buying these books. Textbooks will be electronic, by all means. Only those books that have both demand on paper and in digit is going to be kept. And it doesn't mean maybe some copies, but it will be really smaller. Firstly, I want to say that this kind of discussion is to be welcomed, and especially in the framework of the Armenian Internet Governance Forum. And I understand that the digitization, as Mr. Zargaryan said, is a very important factor. Another good news I want to highlight with great pleasure, that I see today the involvement of the regional libraries. It is very important to understand that those libraries that are acting out of Yerevan, they need support, and need of bigger support, not only of human resources but also technical support. The formation of the skills and development of the skills that we implement and we focus ourselves within Yerevan is to be even more paid for the empowerment of the regional libraries. Recently I had the honor of visiting Kodaik library, and I could say that that was maybe the best library that I have seen all over Armenia, as with its competitiveness, quality and human resources. But the library needs to be technically armed. The library needs to develop human resources, and the support in this is to come from state bodies. I agree absolutely with this. So it is very important. So as along with the digitization, we understand that we need to develop these skills, because as you say, we have no other way. Okay, I want to speak with clear facts. That everybody knows the words of our elderly. Now I'm telling you something quite concretely. My grandchildren, well, naturally, me and grandpa are reading them electronic books because it's convenient, and the reason because when they even go to sleep without even switching on light, you see the Kindle is provided with lighting system, and you can increase the size of the letters, and you don't need books, you don't need eyes. And now I tell my grandchildren, come, I will tell you, come, let's read something electronically. And my son says, no, I want to go to library and I want to read book there. So kids go to Hâncoapet Gradaran and do the same thing, very same things as I did when I was a kid, like working and reading. But when the mother says go to sleep, he takes his flashlight and reads under the blanket. It seems to me that these kids, they are not forced, they are not students, they are even not going to school, they are not feeling the need. Nobody tells them this is the list of books, go read this and that. By the way, in Pushkin school, they don't give the list. They say, let them read whatever they want. And that's right. Children have choice. A lot of books are translated. Like, for example, when I was a kid, I was reading a Polish book, and I saw that it was Maria Kruger's book. It was translated into Armenian, but the fact is that children also want to go to library. Well, I better say not also, because the adults don't go. So kids do want to go to the library. And I forgot to say something else, that the old technologies and the new technologies come and join each other. And quite recently I learned that Arabic publishing house is cooperating with Arlupa, and they are publishing paper books. But if you know, Arlupa application is virtual reality, but if you keep this application on that book, on that picture, the picture starts to sing and talk and dance. So we see that even a paper version can cooperate with the new technologies and the internet union. Well, all of these things was done by the grandma. She would sing and dance and create environment. My children too study in Pushkin school. I can't I can't be that enthusiastic about anything concerning literature. Nevertheless, I want to come back to our discussion also from the regional point of view, because that's indeed very important. You raised that question. All of us, we see what's going on in Yerevan. All of us, we see how this centrism brings everything to Yerevan, but there is an ecosystem which exists, and seems to me it might keep longer even those traditions that we are going to change here. What would you say? I think it is very important to listen to the opinion of the community about the libraries that are acting in their communities. That is to say, a library as a center of civic society, there are different representatives, different layers of the society in the community, and they can come there for a roundtable discussion and do some other event, whatever, anything else. That is to say, the digitization and entry, the invasion of internet into the library can't be, or it is more and that is a long process, and maybe people should work in that direction to keep libraries as place for this kind of meetings, social events, and so on. Okay, Siranush, what you said about Kotak Regional Library. So National Library is giving grants every year to accredited libraries. These are usually the rural libraries, and we have refurbished the regional libraries very well. The rural libraries are receiving furniture. They ask, and we provide computers, TVs if they need, furniture. Every year in the National Library we organize master classes. We bring librarians to National Library for 3-day courses and teach them everything, refresh all the knowledge on librarian skills, and then teach them innovative methods and approaches. Then they go back, and if they have computer, they can start doing things. They can work in the clouds, digitize things. That is to say, I want to say we move towards regions, rural areas, villages. That's a different question, that in our rural areas there are problems, and that is the problem of the council. We go to the rural library and grass is growing on the path leading to the entrance door because nobody is going there. There are librarians who are too old to work, like 70 years old or even older. They don't work. But anyway, we try to help our rural areas. For last year, the accredited libraries of these villages received technical assistance in the form of equipment, and they're operating quite successfully. Shahin Petrosyan. Recently, I read the prediction of one of the managers of Google about the development of the world till 2090. Well, he says in 2020 will be this, in 2040 will be that, and 2060 that, until 2090. From the ecological point of view, I'd say that the paper is going to vanish. That is the prediction, and they are fighting for it, by the way. Well, of course, that would not solve all the ecological problems. We know that the woods, forests of Amazonia are cut not only for books, but you remember the Bolshevik time, how much scrap paper we would receive, that the libraries and institutions would receive volumes of Lenin's writings, Brezhnev writings, Stalin writings, and so on. I don't know what happened with all this paper material. Yes, we'll remember the cold and dark years, but no. These were years of victory. And, well, even burning those books, although I am against this fascist approach of burning books, but nevertheless, the electronic way, maybe for children it's good for learning things. Like, for example, next to my house, quite close to here, a small library, well furnished, prepared, and I see some movement there. Children come, children learn to read, and I see that there are people. It is
frequented. And before, imagine this heap of books. This is the source of diseases. And these many books that are collected in houses and dusting, this is the source of different diseases. That's why the electronic approach is really very progressive, and it should have been done since long ago. I have worked in Mergelan for many years and I have been one of the founders of the Soviet internet to some extent. And at that time, if you remember, whoever had anything to do with programming, imagine with, say, boxes we were receiving and using these perforated cards. Imagine how many trees should have been cut. Imagine all this amount of paper. And finally, the progress happened. These gadgets were created. Who's writing a program on a paper? With a planchette on your phone, you can write a software or program or whatever you want to write. See, we are how much the life has progressed, and we have to welcome it from the ecological point of view as well. Do you remember there was a, if we can say so, book mafia, book and paper mafia? You might even remember one of them is not here, is in Paris. You might guess whom I mean, and he's writing all the curses from Paris, and he was the first thief of these papers. Imagine they were printing Bulgakov, selling it clandestinely, the Master and Margarita, or so-called deficit rare books that were forbidden in the Soviet time. They were printing them on with bad quality, and it was called book mafia. I have had chance to meet with these people, so I welcome the creation of electronic libraries. I agree with Mr. Zarbaryan that this way or that way, after all, the libraries are going to become archives, and it is going to be a depository. I absolutely agree with it. But you say a place, when you go to library, everybody shushes you. Everybody says, shh, shut up. What kind of meeting or socializing are you speaking about? Librarians were like old witches, sorry for the word, who would come and stand next to you. I remember very well the University of the Moscow State University, and the face, the stone face of the old librarian. Well, of course there is also conflict of interest, like the recent book on paper that I have read. It was, I don't know, maybe it was Saramago, 15 or what, how many years ago. That was the last paper book. Now, after a certain age, I am unable to read a book on paper. It's impossible. My eyes ache, my head aches, and so many would prefer reading electronically. Whatever, don't want to speak more. I welcome this discussion. That's what I want to say. With your permission, I want to say something. I have understood that you haven't been in a library since long ago, because now libraries now are divided into clear sectors. Parts where, of course, you should not make noise, not to interfere with others, and there are rooms for talking, brainstorming. You can use your phones and so on. And besides, we express our opinions in the Facebook. Harvard Citation has already created a format how to cite from Facebook. But where are we going to keep this accumulative knowledge? Facebooks might be temporary, they might fade away. But what I mean, you look at this as a consumer, but from the point of view of libraries, we have this problem or the task of preserving the cultural heritage, the scientific value, and passing it to coming generations. With your permission, as long as our time is not endless, but we can, as I said, we can talk around this topic endlessly. We have 4 participants with 2 words. How do you see the library that is going to be there 10 years ago, let's say, not 2? far away in future. Well, because I'm now going to turn this around, and I will be the fifth person who has opinion and who absolutely has no connection or nothing to do with libraries at all. No, nope, nobody wants to comment or say something. Well, 10 years ago, couple of words only, Mara, please. Well, that is going to be a place where it would be a place, if you wake up in the morning and you don't know where to go, you will go to the library. That's the place. Well, we have already started the electronic list of books where you can look for it and see in which library this book is available. Now we have passed to a separate system, and there is a one window search, and you will see whether the book is in audio format, video format, digital format, or paper format. I think that's the idea, and we're to go in that direction. And well, 10 years actually is a very short period of time, and it's going to pass like a second. We're going to have the same picture. Maybe in the world some things might change, but in Armenia the situation will be the same as we have today. We will have the same problems of digitization, the same problem of library development. Children will still going to go to the normal classical libraries, because 10 years is not a big time. Well, frankly, I came here with the hope that I'm going to find, or I'm going to listen to new approaches, new suggestions on how to preserve libraries. But I heard more that libraries are moving towards digitization and are at the verge of extinction, and keeping them as depositories. I want to tell you a couple of words about our library. I want to say that we do everything so as to make our library a cultural center, and it seems to me that if all libraries will work in that direction and will organize in their libraries cultural events, such events that would attract readers, like for example we have a small puppet show for smaller kids. They come and watch the puppet show, and from 40 kids 10 would go and take books home. And if you were to ask Hrazdan inhabitants, all of them think that in Hrazdan there is one cultural center only where they can come together, speak of books, kind of a readers club, and we do master classes, and this attracts a lot the readers. Seems to me that the number of readers is not decreasing, but on the contrary, it is increasing in our library day after day. And if we continue working with this scale, well, actually I was disappointed. I was hoping that to hear how to make the number of our readers bigger, but kind of I heard the contrary predictions. Thank you. Two things only. Hâncoapoș Gradaran library. I didn't want to say something, but the discussion was interesting from both sides. In any case, I'm inclined more towards that idea that was suggested by Mrs. Julian. I think a hybrid library and preservation of both types of library is the most realistic one. God save us from becoming technocrats in future without the paper version and socializing, because libraries are such cultural centers which are not only going to become dead depositories or dead bodies, but there will be live, and because they will be dealing with living people. So I don't imagine how that the child will have only electronic version. Well, of course they will have and it could be the same as saying that children are going to have only electronic mothers and fathers, daddies and moms. Both versions are to be used. I myself prefer paper version, but if I need something very urgently or quickly, I use the electronic version as well. But the question whether the big book is to be electronic or digital or paper for the child, be tangible, the more it will be attractive to culture. And then near future actually, which is 10 years, this way or that we are going to embrace the digitization and improvement of electronic versions, but we are not going to forget the paper carriers, never. And when they say shush in libraries, and if there have been some witches in libraries, as you said, I don't think that there are such, well, how to say, obnoxious ladies, old witches in library as librarians that would shoo away poor readers. Okay, so one thing only now. Okay, one speaker, last speaker. Well, you know, actually, when I was working in the academy in the dark, cold years, I remember very well when Tigran Zagaran came and we started the process of digitization, and we were working, cooperating a lot. But in the beginning of the debate, it was said that we are going now to pass to digitization, we are passing from paper to digit, and something emotional started emerging in the room. What's going to happen? What's going to happen? Let's not forget, dear friends, that we are witnessing a lot of change all over the world. Maybe there are some negative things from the point of view of the friendliness. Well, I want to say that there are unavoidable things that are going to happen with us, and that's the process that we are going to live. Actually, in the history, all these things have been there. Before, for example, they used clay tablets, and most probably when they were starting printing books on paper, people would say, wow, paper, something detestable, something so weak, whereas clay, it is strong, it can live longer, whatever. Maybe later some new carriers will appear, and some of the books will be seen only in museums. Let's not forget that actually the book is a carrier of information, and the physical body is changing in the course of the time, and that is a normal process. And let's finish on the positive note. That's really very positive. We listened to our keynote speakers who shared their experience with us, and we understood, yes indeed, we are now facing quite different libraries. They are not the same libraries that they used to be 20 years ago. Everything is changing. All the educational centers are changing, and the representatives here, distinguished, they spoke that we do have this heritage and we do have these centers, and I hope that everything is going to flow normally. So everything is healthy, everything is normally developing. We need enthusiasm like you who love their job and who want to do their job well, and your desire and your will is being expressed this way. Thank you very much. I just want to add one thing. Most probably what's going to happen will happen. That's why I said that this is temporary. My personal opinion. We should not try commercializing everything. Library, as anything else, maybe assumes some cost and some conservative approach. We should not look at it as a business. If the library can do business, let it do. From my own opinion, in 10 years, most probably, I would agree with you that yes, indeed, 10 years is a very short period of time. For me, it would be much more pleasant that not to see what's going on to happen in 20 years. And I want to wish all the best to all of you. Thank you very much. Now I want to invite Sipana Satrian, who is employer of the Center of People with Physical Difficulties in Sight and Hearing. And now I am inviting Sipan to come and talk. I want to welcome all participants. Dear participants, I'm really glad to be present at this conference. I almost not see. Well, as you have noticed, I hope that spiritually I do see, nevertheless. I will try to present the problems of people with physical difficulties, specifically of people with sight problems connected with their rights for using internet and education, that is to say, all that is connected with internet mainly. Dear participants, our previous discussion was quite interesting for me as well, and I want to start my presentation from paying attention to 4 technological revolutions. Naturally, the first one was the stone writing, then the electricity and computers. Well, today even I have the possibility to use these new gadgets and devices, and thanks exactly to these 4 technological revolutions, starting from the cuneiform, then electricity, then computers, then digitization, we have what we have. And the fact is that all of this is necessary, and all of these were phases that the mankind had to pass through. Now, in respect of people with problems in sight, I could say that the creation of electronic libraries and digitization of everything, of course in brackets of everything, is in our favor, people with bad sights, because today only we can use the audio versions of books. Of course there are certain instruments, but this 4th revolution, computer, has given huge possibilities to people with sight difficulties. I want to speak about the systems of Valentin Hayu and Louis Braille. Don't raise hands because I won't see it. At the end you will simply ask me the questions, and you just warn me that there is a question. When they started to think about the education of people with physical disabilities, after the Middle Ages, when the elucidation started from 17th, 18th century, people suddenly remembered the education problems of people with difficulties. The first was the Frenchman Valentin Hayu, who created a special book, and then Louis Braille, who created the Braille printing format. The letters of Hayu were not different from Latin books, simply they could be touched, and Louis Braille created this dot system, which till today has not any substitute. On the next slide, I have collected information about Braille printing that allowed till today, and still is allowing, as the only one way of those who can't see the alphabet to receive education. This allowed the blind to exercise their right of education and not remain on be listeners only and acquire education through listening. After that were created the speaking books. The speaking books, I could say, that are from my personal opinion, the prototype of the electronic library, when they started to read the books for people with sight disability and record in the beginning on tapes and later on discs, then on digital carriers and CDs, first on vinyl, then the rest, and so people with sight disabilities had access to fiction, and not only fiction, to heritage of the whole literature of the mankind. The books with Braille printing are very expensive. The Braille printing in Armenia, one book is from $3,000 to $5,000, the cost. That is why the digitization or the odization of books has become a salvation for people with difficulties of sight for acquiring education. Next, I want to speak of the special voice recording machine and they started to think about this new type of device, of making it available for the people with sight disabilities, and so speaking applications were created, and naturally people with physical disabilities had to learn how to use these devices, and the first speaking applications were created. And right now, as soon as we upload the Windows operation system in our computers, there is the program Orator that is immediately voicifying whatever is vocalizing, whatever is there on the screen, reading it for us, people who can't see. I wanted to say that as long as the Soviet Union was closed with iron curtains, naturally these innovations did not enter the Soviet Union. Only in 1990s they came to Russia, the speaking apps, and were available to Russian clients. In Armenia, a special program was created in 2002. We spoke about Mergelan Institute. They created this application AREV in 2002 that allowed us to use computers starting from 2002. That was a very good application, very successful, we could say, if it was continued, although because of lack of means they halted its development. And if I'm not mistaken, that part of the Mergelan Institute that was dealing with this speaking application is closed. That project is closed. And I could speak of JAWS, NVDI, of the foreign programs which are quite available. JAWS is rather expensive, $900, but devices that would serve them. I don't know whether this Braille phone keyboard phones have reached Armenia. I haven't met them yet, but these kind of technologies, at least in foreign countries, do exist. Not available to us here, because there is no such shop in Armenia that would provide these kind of technologies here, and mainly we are asking our foreign friends to help us with that. The next slide is vocal apps for phones. The phone started to talk already for 10 years, sorry, they talk. When iPhone was created, people with disability living in United States, they started litigation against the company producing these phones, demanding some more prepared for the use of the blind people. And today we now have this opportunity of the sensor phones. The process is the same, simply everything is substituted by voice. You just touch the screen and the voice everything is reproducing through voice. Telephone, contacts, everything is read. Next, I would like to speak about an initiative which is the Internet Radio Us, Radio Menk, which was an initiative that was supported by International Internet Society and Armenian Internet Society, and us, a group of blinds, we created an internet radio with which we managed to make available correct information to the society, because by the opinion of that group we should not only complain against, say, the society, friends, parents, government, everybody, but instead of it we should act. And what should we do if not then start breaking certain stereotypes in the society? And so that internet radio, in the House of Culture of the Blind People, we create a studio where we started to record popular programs where we would speak about disability, would speak about the attitude in respect of disability. We would call people with disabilities in the first place to take the initiative to go towards the society and not remain as complainers, victims, or people who would always demand, and would raise their awareness on their rights, would try to support parents that have children with disability. We tried with this initiative to have some impact on the attitude of the society, because these problems exist. And where do they come from? On the other slide, on the next slide, I have tried to speak of the models of disability. Today in Armenia we are having the medical model, according to which a person with disability is qualified as a sick person, and that is the state policy, state approach, and that's how it is. So we see only the problem of a person with disability, the disease, and people now look at me and perceive me as a blind person, and actually a blind person is somebody who is not capable, and that's who I am in the opinion of some people. But we have now entered into an era, into an age where we have to pass to social model. Well, I'm optimistic. Step by step we are passing to this social model of perception, according to which disability is perceived as the result of social cultural results of the society, and there is call to create equal conditions, opportunities for all members of the society, including those with disabilities. There is also the legal political model, where again we are seen as a minority. People with disabilities are considered to be a minority, which is not that good, and actually from the point of view of, for example, architectural problems in the urban areas, a lack of social involvement, lack of political involvement, and so on. The benevolent model is not acceptable all over the world now, according to which a person with disability is seen as a victim who needs some benevolence, mercy, empathy, and immediately comes forward the image of the beggar, say a sister beggar or a disabled beggar, even in the Bible. So this benevolent model societies take the people with disability as a load on their shoulders and take responsibility to help them. Of course, the best model is the social model, if we ever would reach it. No country in the world has reached this level of equality, level of rights, but I hope that the societies and the mankind are going in that direction to create, not simply for providing benefits or pension to people. In many countries they already have passed through that threshold. Otherwise you can say afford only certain types of jobs, only certain types of occupations. We should not perceive people only through his, her limitations. We should try to find in this person that point basing on which we can provide the person with a decent job and eliminate the stereotype of the society that these people are incapable of doing things. The next slide is about, well, everybody knows about United Nations Convention, that Armenia has joined this convention, but joining convention is not enough, as you know. It's not a justification in a sense, because we can join a lot of conventions. We haven't signed the protocol of United Nations. If we had signed it, then we would have started changing everything for people with disability. I try to justify my country because I said we don't have that much money, we don't have that much budget, we are a small country, we need to keep our army, so I think better keep the army than help us personally, because I'm a patriot. But all of us are from the same society, and if the society thinks that a person with disability is sick somebody, well, this world that way, the state will also think that way. So based on our own example, we have to try to break that stereotype. I have to say that I have taken to some extent the responsibility of breaking the stones of stereotypes, which is a pleasant obligation, because I was one of the first who does not see but has started to move with the help of a white stick, use the underground, and walk alone in our streets. I think there are a lot of people like me, I'm not alone, who today try not to complain but try to show an example that it is possible to make the impossible possible. We need simply some support, some assessment of needs, some other eyes looking at us. This much was my presentation, and if you have questions, naturally I will answer to them. Geri Korsarian, Internet Society. Braille alphabet and the voice possibilities that the smartphone allows. Who's best today, Braille or audio book? Thank you. I could say that, again, this is a question of a change of generations. The younger generation listens to audiobooks because they are more affordable. Firstly, they are using internet, they can download these books from internet and listen to them. That is to say, they are familiar to technological changes. The older generation naturally prefers the Braille books, Braille alphabet books. For me, I would say that in the course of the last 10 years, I haven't read a single Braille book. Constantly electronic because it is faster, more affordable, and you can't imagine what was going on. We have a library for blind people. The books are, Braille books are very thick and heavy books and very, very dusty. And they were printed 60 years ago, and we read them with our fingers. Imagine, you have to touch them, and they are becoming shabby, and they are aging, and the reading process is very slow. I love very much Braille system because I have acquired my education with it. I think it's substitutable for education, especially at school. Children need to imagine, somehow feel, touch the letter through a braille system. But the technological changes actually are forcing us to follow them. And I could say that audiobooks have become more practical, and the electronic digitized books, which are read through certain speaking programs. We have a problem with PDF format. Our system does not read PDF format. Our speaking programs are very well working with the Word. And sometimes the problem is in that in case of digitization, when there is some when the PDF format is in picture, it is to be so changed into Word, and naturally a lot of letters are being lost. And there are other input programs of voice recognition, for voice recognition, so you would say something and it would allow interactivity. Frankly, I don't know whether there are some voice recognition possibilities. We use what Google allows. Google allows to use with smartphones. We use JAWS and NVDA programs. They are simply reading for us what is written there. We are editing texts, we are uploading texts, we are using internet sites. They read everything, the headings, the buttons, whatever is reading there. It reads a robotic voice, of course, but anyway we read, and you come to get along with it. What about the RF program? RF program is a very good program for the beginning, for the beginners, for teaching the blind people and giving them some imagination notion about it. And most importantly, it is a fully Armenian language program. This program RF seems to be a small world that in the Windows system, it is kind of a system in a system, and you can't manage it through the commands of Windows. It has its own musical library. It's a small world in a bigger world. For the beginners, learning through RF is really very productive. But there comes time when you want to go horizontally and vertically, and RF doesn't allow that much. They added Skype, and you couldn't, for example, call through Skype with the help of RF. But the speaking Windows programs are very easily working with the programs. And in the beginning, RF is very good, but as I say, time comes when you start needing other programs. In the National Laboratory, they have uploaded RF, and there is a special room where the blind people can go and read. I was at the opening of that room, if I remember well. Thank you. Thank you, Sipan. Indeed, all changes start with changes of the mind. I think the society of ours should change way of thinking and perceptions about the image of people with disability. Cloud technologies have become the traditional, have changed it, have brought shift from the traditional way that businesses think about IT resources. What is cloud technology? How it works? What advantages and disadvantages it has? And I invite Microsoft representative Levon Hovanesyan to make a presentation of all these aspects. The microphone is lower than me. Hello everybody. As it was said, we are going to speak of cloud technologies. We'll try to understand whether this is a fashion trend or next technology, maybe the beginning of the fifth or future technological evolutions. All of them are connected with mainly the cloud technologies. What are they? What is this cloud technology? Let me bring an example of electric power. When it was discovered and people started using it, mainly the rich people had their own sources of electricity with engine of internal combustion, and they would switch on some lamps and use it, and then it was of course very expensive, and then the electric stations appeared, thermal stations, hydroelectric stations, and so on, and now everybody uses electricity, certain resource, without thinking about where does it come from. When we switch on the lights, we can't say whether we are now receiving electricity from the nuclear power station or any hydropower, any wind or whatever. Same is happening with the computer resources. We are used to the fact that individuals and businesses have these big rooms with servers, sometimes server farms, and the cloud technologies, they are providing centralized resources for everybody. That is to say, every individual, a man, a person, a startup, a business, can within seconds, within minutes, using the cloud technologies, upgrade its system. So I'm going to bring example of Azure cloud technology of Microsoft, but my main presentation is not about Azure, but about cloud technologies. On the example of Azure, you can see that this is a huge data center distributed all over the world. More than 30 regions are involved here, but this is old, 1 year old slide, but now there are more than 40 data centers. These data centers are huge, like football field size rooms, with their cooling, air conditioning system, with absolutely precise security and restricted access. They are computers which are naturally connected to the servers. Well, every person from these server systems can use specific resources. Well, it is convenient. You can take resources, pay for how much you use. Where do we need this? I think everybody knows that there are several schemes and types of businesses, and I've shown here 4. Let's assume that your business is that you work only daytime, you don't work evening or night time, you work only 12 times, or God save everybody, to grow as speaks, it means that as quick, it means that you will need a lot of new resources, and your resource might have some say predictable peaks, like you are a tour organizing organization, and before the Christmas you know that you are going to have a lot of tourists, or maybe some unpredictable peaks, like for example you are a media site and something has happened somewhere, a scandal or whatever, and suddenly overnight 2 million people visit your site to get access to the information that you provide them. Well, with the principles of this classical service, you will need to take the resources that are equivalent to the peak. Say you have bought $100,000 worth resources and you use the peak only 10% of time. The rest of the 90% of the time, all this resource that you have paid so much money is resting. In case of cloud, you don't have this problem. You pay that much as you use. Like phone, you pay as much as you speak, and at least the majority of the rates should be like that. So consequently, pushing one button, you will have twice more resources, and with one button push, you will switch off the resources. And for businesses, you for businesses there is big economy of resources, and one more very important principle is operating here, a task is being solved here. If you are not a big, rich organization, if you are a startup, you can't afford buying servers or server farms costing, if not tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands of dollars. Won't be possible for you. And next door company will solve their problems easier and be ahead of you. With cloud technology, you can use any architecture for serving your business. So with cloud, the rich and startup businesses are kind of appearing in equal conditions. With several clicks only, you can raise your infrastructure. If you have questions, ask me along, so as I would be able to answer to them. Well, we can use clouds through several ways. This means that you have your own resources. Even in case of your own resources, you are forced, starting with hardware, to till the operation system, security, upgradings, applications, data, all of it is under your responsibility. Of course, it's your computer and it's under your responsibility. Then, in case of cloud, there are these approaches. Infrastructure as a service. When we say take as a service the infrastructure. Imagine, you enter a cloud, you enter Azure Web Cloud, you say, I need 6 or 5 servers with 16 MB RAM and 8 nuclear processors, and I need 10 terabytes memory because 10 gigabytes are too little. In a couple of minutes you have everything ready, served to you, and consequently the hardware, the networking and the virtualization is not your problem. The cloud provider, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, whoever provides these services. You are responsible only for setting the operation system and working on it. In a word, in a nutshell, if, say, with remote desktop, this is a desktop or a Linux, you get in touch with the computer and set everything, or any type of operational system. There is even more advanced option. You take the platform service version. In this case, you see, only the data and software becomes your responsibility. In a couple of words, if you need to place a website, you upload and set up this middleware, whatever it is, and you have here ready-made hosting. You just have to join it and, for example, the FTP protocol and move your files. Naturally, this approach is more preferable, but this one is more flexible. If your business can't afford this approach and you have to work on the level of operation system, then this approach is also quite applicable. The idea is the same, as I said before, to have within minutes any infrastructure of any sophistication or complexity, be it business, organization, very quickly, or individual, very quickly you have this supporting infrastructure at your service. And any business, any organization which wants to work in the internet through these 2 steps strives to reach the third business model, when the application and data you provide yourself, and this becomes your realizable or your product that you are providing or selling as a service or a product. Now, a couple of figures about the usage in order to imagine what is the speed of development of cloud technology. Just open Fortune 500. These are the 500 most quickly developing organizations that is being updated every year. 85% of this organization uses cloud. Microsoft Cloud, but that's not essential as of now. Imagine the 85% of the most quickly developing, growing businesses is building their business on cloud technologies. And I think you see here familiar names. These are those organizations in the course of the recent several years that have placed their businesses on Azure cloud. What is the reason? You pay as much as you use, you don't need to buy, and most importantly, it takes seconds, minutes. You can have in minutes infrastructure of any complexity or sophistication. Well, I'd like to say a couple of words about the development, like what is the development velocity of Microsoft technologies. Like, for example, in the last 12 months, more than 500 new services have emerged in the cloud. When there was a question whether this is a fading away fashion or this is the technology of future, little by little you see that indeed cloud technologies are the technologies of the future. The biggest problem, well, we now learned about the advantages, but there are also disadvantages. Impossible to have only advantages. The biggest disadvantage is the trust and security. I would say trust rather than security, because the Microsoft, I am sure the other cloud services as well, they are spending billions on the security. When I say trust, I mean the following. If you have servers in your rooms, all your data are just next to you. Yeah, you can touch them, you can go watch them, see them, smell them. In case of the cloud, you send your data to another country, even might be to the different hemisphere or different continent. So first comes the question of security, second the trust. If you have watched all the advice, the security level is rather high. Don't want now to go deep in technically, you can read about it. So the main issue is trust. And as long as the Microsoft cloud technology, in this given case, in all continents, in almost all big countries, they have data centers. The governments of these countries, they demand corresponding standardized certifications, ISO certifications and others. I could say that in case of Microsoft is the most certified standardization certification, organization. Naturally, I can't show you all the certificates, but in any country where there are databases, countries have their standards, how the data is to be kept, who has to have access, and all the certificates cloud service providers should have. There are special sites, you can find them, Google them, and which tell you in which case your data are eligible to be given to third persons, and the schemes are very, very, very complicated. Not only the wish of the Internal Revenue Service of any given country is not enough to see your data, and even if your data are to be provided to third persons in the result of numerous court decisions, then you will be informed about it. And these kind of things do happen because of the organized crime cases and terrorist cases. There are, for example, organizations and banks which the legislation of which do not allow to keep data in clouds. Like, there are countries which trust and keep their even strategic data in the clouds of other countries, but some countries do not allow this. For that purpose, there are hybrid data. Part of this data are kept locally, and part of them are kept in cloud databases. Here I'd like to change a little bit the topic, not going far away from cloud technologies. I just want to show that the clouds is seen by many people as kind of safe storage, but that's not the case. The computing resources of clouds, they allow to implement such algorithm that would be impossible to have access to through local possibilities. Like, for example, Azure has several hundred services. Well, I don't know, even if I say 100, they already might have 200. I speak about cognitive services of the cloud, about the intellectual services. We have heard about such algorithms that recognize faces, find people from video materials, recognize voice, make text out of voice or make voice out of text. And we are used that these algorithms are such devices or gadgets that, or I don't know, algorithms that are used in laboratories, and in order to have them you have to have huge resources, and even our biggest institutions do not have them. But in case of cloud, that's not the case. The cloud has as many resources as might be required, and all the services are available, affordable to any person. If API or ADK say does not say anything to you, then you can you have a question. If you want to use on your own, that's a different question. If you get in touch with us as a public service, I don't know, probably for public libraries there might be certain packages. I don't promise, but it's possible. If we leave this aside, you can enter into azure.com site, use it for your trial period for a year, understand what kind of resources you need. We as Microsoft, of course, we shall provide you with technical support. We'll try to understand your problems and say what services are more suitable to you. With cognitive services, go on please. With cognitive services, I would say, if we have internet, I'd show you this video material, or not, I will describe it. Watch video, push it on. I want to show you the resources that I told you. Well, connected with the people with disabilities site. Well, the translation might not be essential here. You might understand what are they speaking about. As I said, using the site voice functions of the API application interface, the program that is as a prototype being used in the United States is already being used. I'm sure it will reach our country as well sooner or later through, say, recognizing the pictures through the Google camera. It tells the person what is happening around, and so on and so on. Or text. All of this won't be possible without cloud technologies. Why? Because for this algorithm we need huge computing resources, which is difficult, or impossible almost, to keep in a bag. You have to have huge techniques for it. I tried to going as little as possible into technological description to explain what are the cloud technologies. If you have questions, please ask them. Okay, for an individual, as a student or a person who wants to use some computing equipment that she doesn't have, to what extent this is usable? I mean, of course you have to pay for it. How much? Well, you are absolutely right. For a business, solving the problem of payment is easier than for the individual, but we have 1 year trial. For startups, we have special program. This is provided for certain time, free of charge. For students, we have another project. The title of the project is Dream Spark. Besides, not all the services are paid. This, to some extent, well, I can't remember by heart all the figures. Let's say several tens of thousands of applications to a server are free of charge, which is quite enough for an individual. That is to say, for individuals, it's always possible to find a version free of charge or with very little price. And for libraries as electronic depositories, what size is free of charge, what size is payable, because servers are rather expensive, and we are also thinking of keeping our information in the cloud and doing these connections through cloud. Are there affordable versions? I will leave you my contacts. We have to meet and talk, because there is no such package for libraries exactly, but maybe there is an agreement with the state, maybe there would be other versions. Usually something will be there. My question, frankly, is about security. You know, this drone system, if these huge territories like football fields that are placed out of cities, what do they have anti-air defense? You know, the drone development has reached to the, you mean server attacks? Well, they shoot movies like how terrorists come and blow up. The data which you put in one cloud, they are kept in 3 different places. In different places. It is possible to keep the same data in 3 different places, in different meaning there is synchronization. The terrorists have to explode half of the planet. So is it the same company? Like, no, this is Microsoft data centers do it. You choose it, you say, let one part be in Australia, one part in United States, one part somewhere else. Well, naturally, say, there might be very little differences. Well, it won't. And Google is close. The rest are too far as competitors. Amazon, Google, Microsoft. Imagine even in Russia there is no such data center. Well, that gentleman promised Razdan Stadium. Well, as not this year at least. Not only. CADN is rather easy. You can sign an agreement and provide it, but as a data center, most probably not. They are strict. No questions? What guarantees do you have that this sensitive data won't become reachable to any side? Well, guarantee, and the second is the responsibility. Okay, if something happened to be lost, how and what is responsible? Well, for the security insurance, there are very clearly stated agreements. Well, only say in case of global terrorism or pedophilia, cases of such obnoxious atrocities could become a case for a court to decide in favor of providing data. That's the first part of your question. If you haven't done anything wrong, like for example, sometimes they're using temporary storage, then it is lost and nothing you can do. Naturally, the responsible side is the Microsoft, because they are SNLLs, where it is written clearly that the services are to work this long, your data are secure, and that is why Microsoft keeps your data in 3 cloud resources, so as to eliminate possibility of losing all the data at once. Okay, the decision that this data can be opened to political or so, well, because you could say, yeah, we know that this person is terrorist, okay, so we can open his data. I could say on my fingers, if a certain country wants to receive data, they need to have the decision of the Supreme Court of that given country, then the Supreme Court of the United States, then the Supreme Court of the country where the data is being kept, if this is in a different country. And that's why some countries demand that the copy be kept only in their country. For example, Russia, that adopted the law that the data is to be kept in Russia only. That was the. And what if they are ciphered? If you have the key and they are encrypted, then nobody can do anything. And you can keep in the database encrypted with private key, public key, and keep the private key to yourself. And after that, that's a big question mark whether anybody can read your data, encrypted data or not. What if the territory where, say, there is unrecognized state, you place the data and then the court decides that, well, this country is a terrorist country, and no. The data centers are in well-known countries: USA, Australia, Europe, Ireland, could be, I want to remember all the countries, can't. Norway, for example, or no, they don't have in Norway yet. Well, they are in such kind of secure countries. No, I mean that if data, for example, are placed from other space, what if the other side recognizes that this is, well, if this site is considered as such by the whole world, but there has never been such case, and there is a special case where all the cases are mentioned, in which cases they were opened, and that might help you to understand when they can be opened and provided to third parties. Okay, if there are no questions, let's finish. Thanks. Thank you very much, Lemon. Coffee break for 30 minutes.